Wish TV, All Indiana Politics
is your premier source for Indiana politics.
Focusing on issues that matter to you.
In-depth, nonpartisan coverage, exclusive interviews with Indiana's political leaders, expert analysis on critical legislation. From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
Good morning and welcome to a special edition of All Indiana Politics. I'm Garrett Bergquist. Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei is dead following a series of U.S. and Israeli airstrikes. He's one of several Iranian leaders who have been killed since the strikes began early Saturday. The air campaign has targeted major government and military targets in Iran. It follows months of rising tensions and military buildup in the region. Besides Khamenei, the strikes have killed the commander of the Revolutionary Guard Corps, the Iranian defense minister, and the secretary of the Iranian National Security Council. Iranian officials say nearly 150 people were killed after the strikes hit a state-run girls' school in the southern part of the country. That school is located right next to a military base. Videos circulating on social media show people cheering Khamenei's death, as well as crowds of regime supporters demanding revenge. So far, neither the U.S. nor Israel report any casualties among their personnel. Iran has launched retaliatory strikes against several regional allies, including Israel, Bahrain, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates. Those have led to several civilian deaths. Northeast Indiana Congressman Marlin Stutzman says the strikes are long overdue. Here's what he said shortly after they began.
This is really remarkable, and it's really that moment that I know that the many Iranian people have been waiting for, people that pay attention to Middle East, just a time where there's some sort of stability in the Middle East. This is that moment that really needed to happen for a long time. And, I think that the Trump administration is making the right call. Of course, with the joint operation with Israel is one that we know has a great chance of being very successful. Whatever the reports that are coming out soon of who was struck, maybe who was already taken out, we're hopeful that this will be a short encounter, but at the same time, we have to be ready for the long haul because this is this time when we really need to be sure that we're successful and that this regime is taken out and the Iranian people have the opportunity to rebuild their country.
Senator Todd Young says Americans should pray for the safety of our brave troops and for the wisdom from their leaders. Iran has refused to dismantle its nuclear program despite repeated American efforts at diplomacy over decades. I look forward to Congress being fully briefed on the operation and included in discussion about any next steps. Democratic Congressman Andre Carson says President Trump continues to put our troops and civilians in danger. The Iranian people have shown extraordinary courage standing up for their rights over and over again. We need to meaningfully strengthen democracy without another open-ended war. And for more on this, let's bring in two members of Indiana's best political team, Republican Whitley Yates and Democrat Laura Beck. Wow. Thank you both for coming in this morning. Whitley, President Trump has claimed credit for ending several armed conflicts since he returned to the Oval Office a year ago. He's campaigned against what he calls forever wars. Do these airstrikes go against that?
I don't believe that they go against that forever war, but I do believe that getting rid of or eliminating the Islamic regime that has created terror in the region, as well as posed significant risks to Americans as well as our allies in Israel, is a good thing. However, making sure that what we do in the next steps of the United States is very critical to make sure we don't end up in a forever war.
Mm-hmm. Laura, President Trump has not made the case to the American people in the same way that, say, President Bush did in the years leading up to the Iraq War or before that with LBJ and the Vietnam conflict. Could that be a problem for him, particularly in Congress?
Yeah, I think it absolutely will be a problem for him, and I think it's a problem with the American people as well. I tend to look at what Senator Young says because I value his foreign policy experience, and he's very clear in his statement to say, I look forward to Congress being briefed. So there needs to be some of the strongest minds, there needs to be congressional input, but if you look at the trend lines of past any of our involvement in the Middle East, we open ourselves up to these forever wars that really don't do anything at home, particularly when you think about sending troops into battle. And I think that's something that President Trump doesn't always think through, particularly in his approach that we're just going to turn it over to you and let you run it. That sometimes doesn't always end well.
I want to return to a point that Whitley raised. So at this point, what are the risks of a post-Khamenei Iran? Are we running the risk of a devil you know situation? Laura, you go first.
I think we're running tremendous risks. I think we also have to look at the world instability as well. You've also got Ukraine, you have China, you have Taiwan. Even though Iran does not have nuclear capabilities to attack the U.S., they are sophisticated cyber actors. They could do quite a bit to us. They could also, the instability with their military could also cause issues, especially to American interest in Europe. The other piece is you have to remember, just a few months ago, we yanked Nicolas Maduro out of his bed. And brought him here. So now you've got potential instability in Venezuela, and now you're looking at the Middle East. We're fighting a war on a lot of fronts.
Whitley, how do you read the risk?
I don't think that as Americans we have the luxury to fear when there are terrorists and bad actors that are looking to take us out. I think that we have to be decisive in our decision making. I think we have the best military in the world, and the way in which we respond to conflicts, the way in which we are supporting our allies is very important. Now, I'm not going to pretend as though we haven't had issues in the Middle East, but what I will say is making sure that there is a dismantled nuclear program within Iran, as well as making sure that the Islamic regime is not active and continuing to push the lines and create terror, specifically among our allies in Israel, is important to the United States.
Mm-hmm. Whitley and Laura, thank you very much. We'll come back to you later in the program. In the meantime, coming up, the 2026 legislative session is in the books. We look back on some key final legislation and hear from your legislative leaders. Welcome back. The 2026 legislative session is officially in the books. State lawmakers wrapped up things for the year late Friday. This is a very unusual session. You'll recall the legislature started early in December for the ultimately unsuccessful effort to redraw Indiana's congressional maps. That led to an early end to session. Perhaps the biggest headline this week, Governor Mike Braun signed legislation to set up a Northwest Indiana Stadium Authority. The bill is Indiana's offer to try to get the Chicago Bears to move to Hammond. Hammond specifically would be able to create a special tax district around the stadium. Lake and Porter counties could levy a 1% food and beverage tax, and Hammond could levy a 12% tax on ticket sales. Those taxes would expire once the bonds are paid off. The Bears' move to Indiana is not a done deal. Illinois lawmakers are in session through May, and they're working on their own offer. New social media guidelines for minors are on the governor's desk. Social media companies would have to verify the ages of anyone applying for an account. If the person is under 16, the platform would have to get parental consent. Accounts for those under 16 could not have infinite scrolling, autoplay, or algorithm-driven content recommendations, and they could only message friends or linked accounts. It's a conversation lawmakers have had for the past couple of years. It gained new traction after the disappearance and death of Fisher's teenager Haley Busby. Investigators say she communicated with a man through an online gaming platform for about a year before she disappeared.
Great way to end session today. I felt like we accomplished what we came when we started, which was to make progress on affordability, and we did that in House Bill 1001 and 1002 around housing and utility costs, and then in House Bill 1003 and 1004 streamlining government. So we came in and we had a ton of other bills. We're obviously super excited about the transformational opportunity in Northwest Indiana and so many things that we were able to accomplish over the last 8 weeks.
When I kind of think back at this session, a very long, short session, since we got baseball season coming up, just seems like we hit a lot of singles and not a lot of home runs. And obviously we started way back in December, and here we are.
Social media limits have been kicked around in this building for at least the last couple of years. Did the Haley Busby case push that over the finish line?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that kind of cemented how important some of this is, and because that's been hard work, as you guys all understand. You've watched us kind of work and struggle with that issue. The Haley Busby piece kind of just helped us, maybe infused us with a bit of realism about what the real dangers are, and so I think that did help get it over the line.
I think it definitely made it critical that we addressed it. You know, it came out of 199, and there was a real desire to put something in a bill, and they were able to find a home for it in House Bill 1408, and we were able to get that bill, you know, across the finish line and headed over to the governor's desk. I do want to say this: we all have to be aware and watch out for our neighbors' kids. We have to watch out for our own kids. We have to make sure that our kids are safe and protected.
You passed two different pieces of legislation regarding child care this session. You had access to the Frog Fund, and then you had the expansion of the tax credits for employer-provided child care. Is that going to solve our child care shortage?
No, I don't think anyone probably tells you that's going to solve the child care shortage. That's a big one. We hear about it every day. It is two good steps in that direction, though, to try and make it, try and get employers more engaged in it, make the child care a little bit less of a cost burden. So we took two steps in the right direction, but I'm not going to pretend that it solves the problem.
You know, we missed an opportunity when it comes to child care. You know, we got a better forecast in December, and we made some deep cuts to CTDF funding and child care reimbursement rates this past summer. But instead of providing that stability, we created the Frog Fund, which may be used for CTDF vouchers. And unfortunately, families cannot plan on May. It seems like a small little may versus a shall, but in real terms, that's instability versus stability. And Hoosier families and Hoosier employers need stability because it will set us up for a strong economic future.
When we come back, Indiana's best political team takes stock of the session's impact on you.
The opinions expressed by guests on this broadcast are solely those of the individual speaking and do not necessarily reflect the views or policies of Wish TV.
And welcome back to All Indiana Politics. Joining us once again, Democrat Laura Beck and Republican Whitley Yates. So, Whitley, for the average Hoosier, what was the most impactful piece of legislation to come out of the 2026 legislative session?
I would have to say it's probably the one focused on social media and children. We've seen a growing number of these types of issues, from groomers to predators, really going after our children. And so the way in which Indiana is being responsive after such a terrible death, I think is really going to lead the way for other states.
Yeah, well, this is something that lawmakers have been working on for the past couple of years, too. Laura, how about you? What do you think is the most impactful piece come out of this?
I've got two. I agree with Whitley. I think the social media legislation is incredibly important, and I really want to applaud Haley Busby's parents, particularly their advocacy behind it, as well as the state legislators who've been very tenacious in doing it. These social media companies, they know what they're doing, they know the negative impact they're having on kids particularly, and they continue to do it. And I think Indiana could really be a model for other states, and I want to see us do that because federally it's very hard to put teeth behind it. My other one was the redistricting. I mean, session actually started in December, I believe, and so, you know, our elections would have fundamentally changed had we done a mid-cycle redistricting, and it didn't. And I think that is really one of the biggest takeaways. It's easy to look at the bears, and it's easy to look at some of the more news, the more sort of sexy ones. But redistricting really was, I think, the strong takeaway.
Now, immigration played a big role this session. We have a bill to require governmental bodies to comply with immigration detainers. It also bans knowingly hiring or employing someone who lacks authorization to work in the United States. And there's another bill to require anyone applying for a commercial driver's license to demonstrate proficiency in English. Laura, we had several high-profile cases, particularly on the truck driving side, of Americans being hurt or killed by someone who is not authorized to be in the country. Is this the right approach?
Well, I think anything we can do to make people safer on our roads is a good move. And while, yes, this is part of it, I think that people are running risk of being hurt every day by people who are American citizens, whose companies or they may not have taken the appropriate steps to be CDL trained. So I think we have to, if anybody drives in the city in Indianapolis or drives on the interstate, you've all had a truck go around you at terrifying speeds or cut you off at terrifying speeds. Republicans. And I think we have to take more of a holistic approach to that. As far as immigration overall, it's the wedge issue du jour. And I think they had to do something because they've got to say that they support President Trump's immigration, particularly the Republicans, in their primaries coming up in May.
Whitley, I'll let you respond, but also, do those two bills unnecessarily insert the state into a federal policy?
Absolutely not. And I didn't know that people didn't know that they shouldn't be hiring people without adequate documentation. And so I think we have to look at this from a workforce development issue when there are plenty of Hoosiers here that have not only adequate documentation, but are looking for opportunities for themselves. And so I'm very proud of the General Assembly for taking that issue on. When it comes to the documentation of drivers and being able to speak English, we've had 2 fatalities from drivers who were not here with the proper documentation, one in Jay County and one in Hendricks County. And if
there were 4 actually in Jay County.
There were 4 in Jay County. And so when thinking about this holistically in protecting Hoosiers, I think that this is a massive step in protecting Hoosiers and making sure that our roads are safe and you can read the signs necessary. And I also think, as someone that worked in the logistics industry, it is really important for those that are carrying, 50,000 pounds, that are driving these trucks, to understand the responsibility necessary in the state of Indiana.
I want to return to something we were talking about earlier, the way that the lawmakers responded to the disappearance and death of Haley Busby, Fisher's teenager. So they did 2 things. They added missing children to the list of people who are eligible for a silver alert, and then you also have that social media bill, which is requiring the companies to have restricted accounts for children under 16. Whitley, what sort of impact will those 2 pieces of legislation have?
They will have a tremendous impact. I've gone to the TikTok headquarters and I've sat with their team to discuss a lot of what they are attempting to do to not only protect children and keep them safe, but to protect our elections and make sure that the algorithms and things of that nature don't have the bad actors to impart things on our elections. And so when I'm thinking about the way in which this is going to impact children, specifically with the algorithms, I think it's going to be positive. I think long-term studies are just now coming out about the effects of how social media is impacting our children, and making sure that our children aren't acting based on algorithms is going to be important in this state.
I want to drill down into that conversation you said you had at TikTok headquarters. How feasible do you think it's going to be to implement some of the things that are in that social media bill? Are they going to follow through on that?
That is going to be very challenging because they're going to have to use the geotagging or the IP addresses of where people are logging on. Now, you're allowed to be on TikTok after the age of 13. However, if you are using any type of a proxy server and they can't actually pinpoint you in Indiana, will they be able to restrict the algorithms that are impacting the children? I don't know, but I think that a good faith effort should be put forth by all social media companies, TikTok, Meta, Facebook, Snapchat, and Twitch.
Whitley, I've got a little under 2 minutes left.
Okay,
I apologize.
No,
Laura,
you're fine.
Laura, I actually want to.
Yeah,
it's okay. I actually want to go back to the silver alert issue for a minute. Is there a possibility here we might end up creating too many alerts?
Well, I mean, you run the risk of that, but at the end of the day, if a silver alert would have saved Haley Busby, if somebody would have seen that and known about it without her family having to be the ones to raise the flag with the police and law enforcement, then I'm all for it. I'm the parent of a teenager. I am with teenagers a lot. It's incredibly challenging because teenagers this is how they communicate, this is where they live, and anything we can do to protect kids particularly, I think we need to do. Yes, we always run the risk of alerts. I think we can refine alerts if we need to, but I think it's incredibly important because what happened there was just so incredibly tragic, and my heart goes out to her family. And I think we all need to really think about, especially with the social media bill and the social media legislation, these companies are going to fight this tooth and nail because this is a massive moneymaker for them. This is all about dollars and cents. They don't see a child, they see a dollar sign, and they see their power. And so we have to really stand up. And again, Indiana can be the model. We have to have the political will to do it.
Got about 20 seconds left. Briefly, biggest missed opportunity this session, Laura?
Well, I mean, I think we got $1 billion in the bank, or whatever surplus number we're at right now. Our roads are still terrible. We're still chronically underfunding education, and affordability remains an issue. We had some opportunities there.
I think that I want to keep the lights on and the bill low. And so I'm excited to see the investigation into some of our utility companies, excited to see the IURC with some shakeups and some changes in leadership. Let's keep those energy bills low and the lights on.
We will have to leave it there. Laura and Whitley, thank you both for coming in this morning. We will be right back.
The opinions expressed by guests on this broadcast are solely those of the individual speaking and do not necessarily reflect the views or policies of Wish TV.
Thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics. We'll be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30. And be sure to podcast online at wishtv.com. Have a great rest of your weekend.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Watch All Indiana Politics live Sunday mornings at 9:30 on Wish TV and at wishtv.com. Subscribe to this podcast and listen weekly here on the All Indiana Podcast Network. And be sure to discover even more great podcasts at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.